Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
I don't have my thingy. Representatives Baum, Camper, Freeman, Gant, Hawk, Hazelwood, Lynn, Ogles, Todd, Whitson, Williams, Wendell, Chairman Hicks.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to call the Finance, Ways, and Means Subcommittee to order for March 16th, 2022. Members, are there any announcements or personal orders before we begin? Representative Lynn.
I have a personal order. Can we please welcome Sue Van Atta? She's our Lebanon local, and she used to be the executive director of our Lebanon Chamber of Commerce. And Sue, thank you for being here today.
Anyone else have a personal order? If not, I have a quick one before we do get started. I've got a former constituent in the crowd. I'm going to ask Mr. Pearson Harrison if he'll stand up. He's a sixth grader this year. In spite of who his dad is, he's a good young man. Thank you for being here. Chair Lady Hazelwood.
I'd just like to point out again to all the children that I'm seeing in the building this week, most parents take their children to Disney World, to the beach, to places like that. Some parents bring their children to Cordell Hull, and I'm just saying that could be cause for parental abuse charges. I'm not sure. Thank you.
Well, Chair Lady, I like to think a budget sub being Dollywood without the fun, so. All right, members, any more personal orders? Seeing none. Members, we have 36 bills on our calendar today. Item number 1 is going to be House Bill 2661, and that's going to be by Representative Sexton. Is he with us yet? 2666, do not see that, so we will, without objection, roll to the hill. We'll go to item number 2. That's going to be House Bill 2287. That's going to be Chairman Boyd. There's Chairman Boyd. You have a motion and a second on House Bill 2287 for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of Committee. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take a little bit of a personal order. And my colleague from Wilson County, Representative Lynn, acknowledged we actually have with us today County Commissioner Sue Van Atta and our director of the Wilson County Expo Center, Gail Hibbert, that are here, have an interest in this bill. And I just want to recognize them here today. It's great to have them.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, as many of you know, in 2021, the Tennessee State Fair was moved to Wilson County. And so what we would like to do, the Fair Board and the Expo Center would like to be able to put a couple of signs out on the interstate that would point that out to people traveling on the interstate. And that's all this legislation does, is it gives them the authority to coordinate with TDOT. It would be paid for by local dollars, and so there's no state dollars involved in that. Mr. Chairman, I will take any questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman Boyd. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion on House Bill 2287? Question's been called. Any objection to calling the question? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2287, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2287 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of Committee.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 3 on our calendar. There is Representative Chairman Carr, House Bill 2012. You have a motion and a second, Chairman, on House Bill 2012.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee. This bill here is trying to right a little wrong on the distribution of sales taxes. Back in 2002, we went from 6% sales tax to 7%. And since 1947 until 2002, the state shared portion of these state tax collections designated for the state's general fund with municipalities. Well, this sharing wasn't exactly even. The cities have not been getting their fair share of that. The state increased the sales tax, as I said, from 6% to 7%. It's, however, unlike had been done with all the previous rate increases, the sales taxes revenues associated with the 2002 increase were not shared with the municipalities. Thereby, it's altering the 55 years history of sharing relationship with the cities. So all this is trying to do, and we hope the government will put in his budget, is to give the cities their share of the money that's not been the extra 1% that's not been given to them since 2002 and on to this period of time. And with that, I'd stand with any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2012. Any discussion? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this bill. During that time, it was tough times for the state, and I feel that the municipalities were amenable to what was going on. But we're at a place right now where we have the revenues on a recurring basis that we can go back and reinstate that share that's due to them anyway. So I think the cities have been pretty amenable to helping the state at that time. It's time to reinstate this and send it back. So I support your bill, and hopefully the governor will, or this body, might decide as we continue through the budget process to go ahead and make that commitment now while we're in a position where we can as a state.
Chairman Carr.
Thank you, and thank you, Leader Camper there. Yeah, we've talked about this for the last 2 or 3 years, and we thought maybe this would be the best time to do it. So we're bringing it forth at this time, and we are in talks with the governor, and maybe if he puts it in his budget, this is a good backup just in case if he were not to, and maybe y'all would consider this, but it just gives the cities back their share of that 1%.
All right, thank you, Chairman, very much. Further discussion? Seeing none, thank you for bringing this bill, Chairman Carr, and as Leader Camper said, this has been talked about for a while, and there's several bills that discuss pretty much what this bill is trying to do, and so there's several bills out there that will bring a couple options to this committee as well as the entire body at some point in time. So thank you for bringing this. It does have a fiscal note, the fiscal impact, as you've already mentioned. So we will have to place it behind the budget and then reconsider it at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 2012 goes behind the budget.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee, for your consideration.
Thank you, Chairman. All right, that brings us to item number 4 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 2003 by Chairman Subcommittee. You have a motion and a second. Sir, you're recognized on House Bill 2003 for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, first of all, thank you for allowing me to roll this 1 week. It was an issue with education. I had to get back over there, too. What this does, very, very briefly, is it creates a bonus plan for our exceptional teachers in Tennessee. It's a grant program that would be funded by the General Assembly outside the BEP or the TISA program if it is moved forward. One of the reasons why we have this bill going to be placed hopefully behind the budget and finance is because in the new TISA funding formula, there's no way for us to give bonuses to our very high-performing teachers. We are working right now on language on that to get that implemented into the TISA funding plan so that we have a way with our exceptional teachers to provide them with a bonus for their exceptional work with our students. That's what it does right now. If we are successful with getting that into the TISA language, then this bill will sit right where it is in finance.
All right, members, you've heard this description. Any discussion, and I'll start out. How will this work with the differentiated pay plan that the LEAs currently have to have? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. This is just a bonus on top of this doesn't affect their salary, doesn't affect their pay. It is a direct bonus to the educators based off of their performance in growth and proficiency. So being a level 4, you would get a bonus on growth, and a level 5, you get a bonus on growth. And if you had students that were proficient to a certain level, you would get an extra bonus as a level 4. And the same thing with a level 5 teacher. If the percentages of your students were proficient, they would get a direct bonus from the state of Tennessee. And it all comes from the state of Tennessee.
So the performance is for growth, not achievement.
Growth and proficiency. There's two metrics. So you can get one for growth, and if you have students that you're also proficient on, you can get a bonus on top of that too.
Okay, and this would be in addition to the differentiated pay plan, which many of the districts look at. Well, they can kind of set their own. So in my school district, we actually look at the overall level of effectiveness. That's what we give our bonuses on. Some may give it on just growth. Some may give it on proficiency. So this would be in addition to. Is that your understanding?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
sir.
Members, further discussion on House Bill 2003. Seeing none, as the chairman has alluded to, there is an expenditure increase. So we will have to place this behind the budget to consider it at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 2003 goes behind the budget.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
Item number 4 on the calendar is House Bill 2003. Oh, I'm sorry. I stepped out for a minute and got one behind. I do apologize. Next on our calendar is House Bill 2514. Chairman Crawford, I think he may be tied up in another committee, so we're going to roll this 3 spaces. And Chairman Halford has House Bill 1018, which is item number 6. I also don't see him, so we
Yes,
will.
I do.
Oh, sorry.
Here I am. Hey, Patsy.
Chris is blocking me. And you shrank. I couldn't see you. I apologize, Chairman Halford.
That's okay.
You're recognized, and I heard a motion in a second.
Thank you, Lady Chairman. House Bill 1018 has a little bit of history. It was first passed in 2019, and there were a couple of things left out, and then it came back to us in 2020, and it passed the House, never got through the Senate. So here we are again with it today to try to get these errors that were created or left out back then into the bill. So what it does, handgun carry permits will still be needed for people who want to carry out of state, have to have a permit for their job or a permit to carry in places that require it. The permitting process will still be in place even if constitutional carry passes. This bill adds the 4-year background check and the renewal fee language to mirror the enhanced carry permit language so we can continue to do background checks and renew the $50 fee every 8 years. And Madam Chairman, I renew my motion.
You've heard the sponsor's explanation. Are there questions? Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't expect you to know this answer, quite frankly, but I guess I'm asking it to make a point. If I remember correctly, the department is sitting on a pretty hefty reserve from the charges they have made over the years to handgun permit holders. And I would love to see this expenditure come out of that reserve. I don't know what the process is to do that, but I know where this is probably headed here shortly, but I'd just love to see that reserve used for something like this.
Right. All I know about that is that without this, the fee would have been $65, and so it has gone down now to $50. That's the only thing that I know about that particular part.
Okay. Well, thank you. Just a point to make that I'd like that to consider at some point in time. Thank you.
Are there other comments or questions? Well, Chairman Hoffer, we want to commend you on your perseverance since 2019.
Right. Well, actually, I inherited the bill, so.
Well, but again, your willingness to take up the mantle or the torch or whatever, and hopefully this time get it over the finish line because it does leave here and go to full finance. Right. House Bill 2514. To full. Oh, sorry. Okay. This is what happens when you get a substitute.
Well, I'm in that category too.
But I'm given to understand that there is an issue. I'm going to give this gavel back to the real chairman of this committee, so as he is privy to the information that has just come up that maybe changes something. And we did not vote. For the record, there was no vote. So we are still on Chairman Hoffer's bill. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair Lady. And again, members, we're on House Bill 1018. There is a slight problem with the fiscal note that we've got a little bit more work to do. If you look at the increase in state expenditures of $96,000, the revenues, of course, doesn't come in. The understanding is until the following year. So we've got a little bit of work to do to get that straightened out, but we'll work on that. So
Okay.
we're going to place you behind the budget, but don't get too torn up over that. So.
Man, I'm used to waiting.
Yeah, well, good. All right, with that said, members, any further discussion on House Bill 2514? Or, I'm sorry, let me jump on. 1018. We'll come back to 2514 in a second. Again, this is House Bill 1018. We'll get back on track.
No one has had enough coffee up here yet.
That's true. All right, members, we're on House Bill 1018. Any discussion on House Bill 1018? Seeing none, it's already been alluded to. There is a cost associated with this, so House Bill 1018, without objection, will go behind the budget.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Chairman. All right, Cropper. Okay. All right, members, that brings us to item number 7. Item number 7, there's Chair Lady Hilton. We're on House Bill 2148. You have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are recognized on House Bill 2148, but it does look like there is an amendment we need to draft, and that's drafting code 015660. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You have a motion and a second. If you'd like to describe the amendment.
Okay. This section just sunsets this legislation on July 1st, 2026.
All right, thank you. Members, you've heard the description of the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we're now voting on Amendment 015660 to House Bill 2148. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended, and you are recognized for a description of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This just creates the Tennessee Center for Nursing Advancement within East Tennessee State University to address issues of nursing workforce needs and makes other related changes.
All right, thank you. And we do have a funding letter for this piece of legislation. So, members, are there any discussion for House Bill 2148? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2148, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2148 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to item number 8. Item number 8 is House Bill 2672 by Chairman Terry. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized for a brief description on House Bill 2672.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. This bill was brought to me by the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker in conjunction with their work with the Treasurer. And what this bill does is it prohibits the State Treasurer from entering into a contractual agreement with a state depository institution for the state's primary cash management banking services if the state depository institution has a policy that prohibits financing to companies in the fossil fuel industry. It makes exemptions if it is determined that the Department of Treasury or the state would not be able to perform its functions otherwise, and no other qualified state depository institution or contractor provides the services needed.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sponsor, for the description. Any discussion on House Bill 2672? Representative Lynn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Did you say if the institution has a policy of not investing in fossil fuels or lending credit to fossil fuels?
You're recognized.
Thank you. If they have a policy that prohibits financing to companies in the fossil fuel industry.
Okay. I did do a little research on this because I don't think any institution should have a policy not to lend credit to fossil fuels. We need fossil fuels. We need them very, very much. But I was wondering, is the state treasurer, is he in favor of this, of doing this?
You're recognized, sir.
Thank you. I do have a letter from the state treasurer. He's one that helped draft the bill.
Okay.
And as he says here in the letter, the state of Tennessee has significant investments in fossil fuels, more than $2 billion, and I stand by these investments. It would not be in Tennessee's best interest to turn our backs on the fossil fuel industry. Furthermore, I believe it would be a detriment to align the state with entities that have a plan to, or that have or plan to do so. The state's current vendor does not have a campaign or policy against fossil fuels. To ensure this continues, the Tennessee Department of Treasury worked with Lieutenant Governor McNally and Speaker Sexton to draft this bill, allowing the state treasurer to choose not to contract with a vendor with a policy opposing the fossil fuel industry.
Mr. Chairman?
You're recognized, Representative Lynn.
I think this sends a good message to the industry that Tennessee is not in favor of them not lending credit to the fossil fuel industry because we need fossil fuels. Right now we're watching the price of gas go up exponentially. It's absolutely terrible. Yesterday, President Biden's nominee to the Federal Reserve withdrew her own name because of the pushback against her policy of the Federal Reserve not giving credit to the fossil fuel industry. And I think that's very important that she did withdraw her name. So thank you very much. I just wanted to ask those questions about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Lynn. Further discussion on House Bill 2672. Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, why did you say there was a need to have this bill? What problem are we trying to solve with this bill?
You're recognized, Chairman Terry.
Thank you. I would say currently the state vendor is not doing this, but as in this letter The treasurer has said, he says divestment from fossil fuels has been a popular news topic, particularly within the Biden administration pressuring U.S. banks to stop lending or investing in the fossil fuel industry. And he opposes policies that condemn fossil fuels, and he thinks it would be in the best financial interest of the state to continue doing what we're doing.
Leader Camper.
And this bill would do what would this bill do with respect to what you just read to us?
Chairman Terry.
Thank you. It would prohibit us from investing our cash management system into a state depository for the state's primary cash management banking services if they have a policy that prohibits financing to companies in the fossil fuel industry.
Leader Camper.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion. Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to agree with my colleague to my left's comments, and I'm in full agreement with what I think the outcome of this legislation is intended to be. I do have a problem with the process. I have a problem with us telling companies what they can or cannot invest or divest themselves of, and that's my whole issue with this bill. I do feel like that starting down this path is a bit of a slippery slope. So thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Further discussion? Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just want to ask a quick question. So I understand the policy piece that prohibits, but what if they have a policy that, or they make a business decision not to invest in energy companies, or that they have a policy that you know, the risk factor of the fossil fuel industry is too high, and so it falls out. I mean, can they? Does it just have to specifically say they cannot invest in fossil fuels, or they can have can they have a policy that would effectively cut fossil fuels out? Chairman Terry.
Thank you. In Part 2 of this, it says, for the purposes of this subsection, the term companies in the fossil fuel industry means entities with at least 50% of its annual revenue obtained from business operations involving natural gas, oil, kerosene, petroleum, coal, hydrocarbon product, or any form of solid, liquid, or gaseous fuel derived from such material to produce heat for the generation of electricity.
Representative Freeman.
Maybe I wasn't clear. So could they have a policy that effectively removes their ability to invest in fossil fuels, or do they have to have a specific policy that says we do not invest in fossil fuels?
So if
you're recognized.
So if they have a policy that prohibits financing to companies that companies in the fossil fuel industry, which is what I just defined. So if they have a policy specifically that discriminates against those companies that meet that criteria.
Got it.
Representative Freeman. Good. All right, further discussion. House Bill 2672. Seeing that, Chairman Baum.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. Does the state have any other policies like this where we wouldn't engage in business with some kind of a financial institution if they do or don't invest in other kinds of goods or services?
You're recognized, sir.
That's a great question, and I don't know the specific answer to that. I can get it to you. I know that in another issue that I was discussing with the Treasurer's Office, I know that they continually review and go over their investing strategy, and so they may personally have a policy that they won't invest in certain things. But to answer your specific question, I'll have to get that to you.
Chairman Baum.
So I guess it could be a first.
It could be.
Further discussion, 2672. Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2672, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Yeah, if you would like to be recorded as a no, please let the clerk know, but otherwise, House Bill 2672 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Chairman of the Committee.
All right, item number 9, that's going to be House Bill 2608. House Bill 2608 by Chairman Vaughn. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized for a brief description.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. You can call this a transparency bill if you would like. You can call it truth in granting if you would like. What this bill proposes, actually it's an opportunity for this committee for their grants that are given from the state to broadband expansion companies to actually be in the dollar amount that they give them. Because right now the state takes back a 10% sales and use tax whenever equipment is bought or sold. And so what this would do was this would give a temporary sales tax exemption for a period of 5 years, so that whenever we say we're giving $50 million for broadband expansion, we're not actually pulling back $5 million of that through sales and use tax. And so that would be the purpose of this bill, sir.
All right, thank you very much. That's, again, the description for House Bill 2608. Any discussion? Seeing none, we do have a fiscal note for House Bill 2608, so we have a little more work to do on that, sir. But until then, without objection, House Bill 2608 will go behind the budget.
Sounds like a great place to be, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members, we're going to back up here to item number 5. I see that Chairman Crawford just left us, so we'll give him a second to see if he comes back in. Okay, without objection, we'll roll House Bill 2514. We'll roll that 3 more spaces. Without objection, roll 3 spaces. All right, that brings us on to item number 10. Item number 10 on our calendar is going to be House Bill 1979 by Chairman Bricken. House Bill 1979 was previously considered and placed behind the budget, and since we received a funding letter, we can now move this bill on to full finance if this committee so chooses. So what we will do at this time, without objection, I'm about to bring this back before us, and we're going to reconsider our action. So without objection, seeing none, we will now reconsider our actions on House Bill 1979. It is now properly back before us. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized on House Bill 1979.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is from the Secretary of State. It basically renews for an additional year the $10 reduction in the charitable license fees to all charities in the state, and it is funded out of the restricted funds of the Secretary of State. So that is what it does.
All right, thank you very much. Again, this is House Bill 1979. You heard the description. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 1979, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1979 moves to full finance. Thank you. All right, members, we're going to move to the addendum and take up Representative Bricken's other piece of legislation. That's going to be
after that on number 11 too, though.
Item number 11. Well, let's go ahead and get that one. Members, let's stick with right where we're at. Item number 11, you have a motion to second on House Bill 2331. You have a motion second. You are recognized on House Bill 2331 for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill will require all the counties in Tennessee by 2024 to install paper verifiable voting machines in their districts. It gives the election commissioner the ability to grant a 2-year extension if needed. Again, this bill will certainly improve the integrity of voting in Tennessee. The Secretary of State's office feels like they can come up with the funding costs for these machines for the districts. So I certainly would encourage passage of this, and hopefully y'all signing on to it. So.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sponsor. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2331. Any discussion? Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Representative Bricken, Chairman Bricken. Thank you for this bill. I think it's really important. I know, as serving on the election subcommittee at the will of the Speaker, there was a lot of discussion about verifiable paper trails. I know that Mr. Goins, Secretary of State's office regarding elections, did comment in there that they had appropriate funds in place through federal and local state grants to help offset or defray costs as it relates to our communities. I did hear from my district, and they feel like that a verifiable paper trail is important, just for the optics, really, more than anything as it relates to our elections. And so thank you for bringing this bill. I look forward to working with you and the members of Finance and Secretary of State to try to find a way to get a funding letter or get these funds in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. Representative Bricken?
Okay.
Comment? Let's go to Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Chairman. And I think it's a great idea. It's good for election security. I actually have been interested in this for quite some time. And the question I always get asked, and I would like to ask you, is did someone bring this to you? Does this benefit, or did someone bring this to you?
My local election director and I were discussing this, and Coffee County already has a verifiable paper trail, and honestly, I said, geez, I thought if Coffee County has it, probably everyone has it. He said, no. He said, really, there's 61 counties that still don't. And so I came up here and I talked to Mr. Goins, and he said, no, that's the situation. And I said, well, and he's basically encouraged me. He said, Rush, I think if you would scope it in the way of because there's the terminology of this verifiable paper trail, and certainly make it open for all there's 6 major vendors that provide these machines, and they all have the capabilities of it. And he just encouraged me to prepare the legislation, and so here I am.
Representative Freeman.
And I just want to hear you say it, and I believe this will probably be the case, but this is not intended to either put somebody out of business nor pick winners and losers in the election machine business, correct?
Absolutely not.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to support the member on the bill as well. And maybe, Mr. Chairman, we could see if the HAVA funds could be used to do this, the Help America Vote funds. It's a pot of money that I think is still sitting at the Secretary of State level, and maybe that's a place where we can use to fund this.
That's great. I'm sure they're looking at that, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Leader Camper. Further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Sponsor, I think you've certainly got some allies on this committee and willing to help you with this piece of legislation. Of course, there is a cost associated with House Bill 2331, so we will have to place it behind the budget to reconsider it at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 2331 will go behind the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, members, let's go back to is Representative Sexton. Oh, hold on. You'll be next. Let's grab Representative Bricken's last one, item number 36. All right. Item number 36 is House Bill 2330 by Representative Bricken. You have a motion and a second. You're recognized for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill is kind of for all Tennesseans that have taken the time and cost of getting the extra effort to obtain the enhanced gun permit, which is an 8-year permit. This bill basically will turn that 8-year permit into a lifetime permit. So hopefully it'll encourage a lot of citizens to go ahead and get the full 8-hour course of training, which I think we all would think is the proper thing for any citizen to carry a handgun to have. So again, this basically just makes the 8-year permit a lifetime. It's a $100 fee to get the permit, and if they already have the 8-year permit, there's a $50 fee to return that 8-year permit into a lifetime permit.
All right, thank you very much, members. You've heard the description of House Bill 2330. Any discussion? Seeing none, there is a cost associated with House Bill 2330, so we will have to place it behind the budget, consider it at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 2330 behind the budget. Thank you.
Committee and Chairman.
All right, now that brings us back to item number 1 to Representative Sexton. House Bill 26 2666, and again, that's item number 1. Representative Sexton, you have a motion and a second. You're recognized for a brief discussion. Description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee, and I apologize for being late. This is the bill that I'm carrying for the speaker, and it deals with textbooks in public schools, and it creates a couple of more, two more additions to the textbook commission. And let me just read some of the things that it'll do. It requires the State Textbook Commission to establish uniform standards defining what is harmful to minors for use by the LEAs in the public charter schools, in defining and removing materials from their libraries, giving the State Textbook Commission the authority to review new books and other materials to ensure that they meet the standards and are not harmful to minors. It establishes an appeals process for any parent to use to challenge the placement of a book or other educational material on the list, the removal of books or materials from the list. It adds 2 voting members and 1 ex officio member, which would be the State Textbook Commission. The Tennessee State Library, and that'd be the ex officio member.
Okay. All right, members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2666. Any discussion? Seeing none, there is a cost associated with House Bill 2666, so we will have to place it behind the budget to reconsider it at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 2666 will go behind the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, members, that brings us to item number 5. Item number 5 on our calendar is House Bill 2514 by Chairman Crawford. You have a motion and a second. Sir, you are recognized for a brief description on House Bill 2514.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. As some of you are very aware, I come from the city of Bristol, and it's split straight down the middle. One side of the street is Virginia, the other side is Tennessee. Virginia has passed legislation that deals with this and takes care of it, so now we're trying to fix it on the Tennessee side. Basically, what this bill will do, it will create an area under a festival license that they can sell alcohol and drink alcohol. Has to be the area, they have to take it to the TABC to be approved. It has to meet all TABC requirements as far as have to be 21, no kids, no guns, those type things. And if that is approved, what it will do for our city is we have one of the largest music festivals in the whole country called Rhythm and Roots. And so this will allow patrons who's eating at the restaurants and other vendors, if they cross state lines, they don't have to go to jail. Right now, the way it is, you can do it in Virginia, but if you come across the state line, you go to jail for open container. So hopefully we can get this fixed, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you all may have.
All right, thank you very much for this description on House Bill 2514. Members, any discussion? Question's been called. Any objection called on the question? Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2514, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2514 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
All right, brings us back to item number 12 on our calendar. Item number 12 on our calendar is going to be Representative Eldridge on House Bill 1959. You have a motion and a second. Give us just a second to get there. It looks like you have an amendment that rewrites the bill, so let's go ahead and get the amendment on. I have drafting code 014898. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairman.
You have a motion, a second. You're recognized on the amendment. Let's go ahead and just put that on since it rewrites, if that's okay. So, any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye for drafting code. Hold on one second. Drafting code 014898. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended, and now you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. This bill is asking for grants to be made in equal amounts of $2 million to each county highway department. The money's to be used exclusively for repair and paving of their roads, not to be used to increase salaries or add staff. We want to see this money go to the roads. I think all of us are aware that the situation we have going on in our county is just the same as the state. Some of their roads are getting in terrible condition. Many counties do not have a real high amount of gas tax coming in, especially a lot of our rural areas. And this bill was designed to bring attention to and hopefully help out some of our local people. I'd just like to add that I appreciate everyone that signed on to this bill. We had quite a good response from that, and I appreciate, too, the County Highway Officials Association for their support in this. I think we all know we have an issue there with this, and with that, Chairman.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Sponsor, for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 1915? Seeing none, there is a cost associated with it. I know you've been working hard on this, so I appreciate your hard work. And, of course, this will be another option as we begin to look at what bills will be priority. So thank you for bringing this forward. But it does have a cost associated with it, and we will have to place it behind the budget to reconsider it at a later date. So without objection, House Bill 1915 will go behind the budget.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate the consideration.
All right, that brings us to item number 13 on our calendar. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hardaway is presenting another committee and asks could he roll this to the Hill.
Yes, ma'am. So without objection, you heard the request. House Bill 1317, without objection, will be rolled to the Hill. All right, that brings us to item number 14 on our calendar. Item number 14 is House Bill 1274 by Representative Powell. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I roll this bill 1 week, please?
You sure can. Without objection, you've heard the request. House Bill 1274 has been requested to be rolled 1 week. Without objection, so moved. That brings us to item number 15. Item number 15 on our calendar is House Bill 2278, also by Representative Powell. You're recognized. You have a motion to second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill simply has TASER study Amtrak expansion across the state of Tennessee and passenger rail in general.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2278. We will be having a special TASER calendar toward the end and in a couple of weeks. So without objection, House Bill 2278 moves to the TASER calendar.
Thank you.
So moved. Thank you. All right. That brings us to item number 16 on our calendar. Item number 16 is House Bill 1740 by Representative Sparks. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized for a brief description on House Bill 1740.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. Members, when I was first elected, what surprised me about Tennessee is how diverse we are, but yet unique. First conversation was with Frank Nicely and Jeremy Faison, so you can imagine where that went. But and just saying, but we're very unique. I think we have, as y'all know, 3 grand divisions, Mountain City to Memphis, and what this bill does is just add 3 commissioners to kind of help define those problems and bring awareness to those problems. For example, broadband. We've got broadband in Rutherford County for the most part, and I can't imagine being in a rural area and not have access to some of this for education and workforce development and business. So that's what House Bill 1740 does, is simply add 3 commissioners. And each would be in a rural, suburban, and a urban district. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative Sparks. Members, you've heard the description. Is there any discussion on House Bill 1740? Seeing none, there is a cost associated with House Bill 1740, so without objection, we will place it behind the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 17. Item number 17 on our calendar is House Bill 2059 by Representative Sparks. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized for a brief description on House Bill 2059.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Chairman and committee members, this is what we passed last year. We know that gun safety and whether it's dealing with mental health or violence that we've seen in many areas, especially in our urban areas, is at an all-time high, unfortunately. But basically what this bill does is just cut the sales tax off gun safes, which I think does improve gun safety. I mentioned to this committee last year where I went to Kyle Yorlett's funeral. I didn't know Mr. Kyle Yorlett. He was the young musician that was killed in Nashville. He was killed by a stolen gun. The fiscal note on those 3 young people that committed that is probably $500,000 to $750,000 is fiscal note to incarcerate those young folks, not counting the emotional cost. So I do think that with our sales tax being being the highest in the nation, I do think this is a step in the right direction. Chairman, I do have Mark Brassfield to testify. He testified last year. If you'd like to hear a few words from him.
Thank you. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2059, and also you have heard the request. We did not get him on the calendar quick enough, but what we can do, if someone does want to hear from Mr. Brassfield, we will entertain a motion that we do hear that. Did I hear a motion? You have a motion. Is there a second? Will you have a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. With that said, we will now, without objection, go out of session, and we will now hear from our guest, Mark Brassfield. And, sir, if you would just step to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes, and if you'll just begin by stating your name.
Well, like Representative Sparks said, my name's Mark Brassfield. I'm the owner, founder of the Safe House here in Nashville. I have 2 locations in Tennessee. When I testified last year about this, I spoke about the safety aspects of gun safes and pistol safes. Having 2 stores in Tennessee, I sell an average of about 2,000 safes, gun safes a year. And I see the direct relationship between safety, gun safety, and safes, having a safe. And if you look at all the statistics, you know, you can see that 70% of suicides with guns and everything, and the child safety aspects of this. So the thing I'd want y'all to think about is, you know, the committee, is if this bill saved the life of one of your loved ones, is it worth passing? I know there's a fiscal note to it. Everything's about money, but I see the direct relationship. I have customers come in every day to purchase a gun safe to protect their guns from whether it's their children or criminals. And I have a few come in, not a lot, that have had direct, you know, break-ins. Their guns weren't stolen because they had gun safes, or children try to get their guns, not that they're going to use them bad, but I see the direct relationship, being in the safe business, that this bill has helped. And to give you a statistic from me, I pulled this morning, since this bill passed, my gun safe sales are up 33%. Now, from a selfish standpoint, I'm very happy about that. But from a safety standpoint, if you extrapolated that statistically, how many guns did that keep out of someone's hands that could have been used in a bad way? So that's what I asked you to consider with this. And of course, from a selfish standpoint, of course, this is good for me, but overall safety for our citizens, I'm a citizen just like y'all are, that this bill has worked. So I want you to know, from my perspective, being a business owner that sells gun safes, it has worked. So it's not just something that's been thrown out there and it's not worked, because my sales have directly increased. And the day this passed, I've constantly had people come in and go, hey, gun safes are sales tax free. This has helped me buy a gun safe. So I just leave it with that, and I appreciate you letting me speak. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Brassfield. And I'll ask you to just hold up just for a second, and let's see if any of the members have any questions. And I think we have one from Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Chairman. And you actually answered my question, the increase. I listen to the radio. I live in Nashville. Okay. Maybe I bought a safe from you before. And you guys advertise that they're tax-free.
Tax-free, yeah.
And so anyway, I was just curious if we'd seen an increase, and that's a pretty significant increase in passing.
You see a smile on my face. Yeah, it's great. But I mean, and I'm a gun owner, and I've had guns all my life, and I've always, before I even carried gun safes, I mean, I'm a big advocate of, if you're a gun owner, you need to responsibly lock your guns up.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, and I happen to sell the product that helps do that. So.
Absolutely. Members, any further questions for our guest? If not, thank you, sir, for being here. Thank you very much. And without objection, members, we're going to go back in session. And we're back on the bill. Representative Sparks?
Yeah, just full disclosure on Mark, I just happened to hear his commercial like Representative Freeman did, and when I was asked to carry this bill, I didn't know much about gun safes, gun safety. So I heard his commercial, and I called him. I said, hey, would you be willing to come up and testify? And he says, yeah, but it looks kind of self-serving for me. And I said, man, we got folks up here all the time that are self-serving, just be honest with you. I mean, just saying. And and so Mark was reluctant at first to come up and testify. So I just, you know, I know he probably feels a little awkward because But he did, I mean, I had to kind of talk him into coming up, so just let the committee know. Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all's consideration on this bill.
And again, we appreciate you. And Representative Sparks, I know you worked hard on this last year, and I know you're continuing to work hard on this year. And we certainly thank the guests for coming. With that, members, you've heard the description, you've heard the comments, and now is there any further discussion on the bill? And let's go back to Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Chairman. I promise I'll stop hogging the mic today. I really appreciate you bringing this and for recognizing that sometimes restricting access to firearms does increase safety. And this is, if we can save a life, like we just said, I think we're doing the right thing. So thank you again for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Todd.
I would have to add to that comment that restricting access to guns by criminals is definitely an increase to safety. And so I do appreciate you bringing this.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Todd. Further discussion? Seeing none, as it's already been alluded to, there is a cost associated with House Bill 2059, so we will have to place it behind the budget and reconsider it at a later date. So without objection, behind the budget. All right, that brings us to item number 18, House Bill 1647. And I think this is Representative Wright, and I think he's waited about as patiently as anyone has, even from last week's meeting. So thank you, sir. We appreciate that. You have a motion and a second on House Bill 1647 for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill is brought on behalf of the Register of Deeds Association of Tennessee County Officials Association. Let me read in part from the bill. For collecting and reporting taxes levied under this section, county registers are entitled to retain as a commission 5% of the taxes so collected. Let me give a little bit of background. In 1978, the register's commission was set at 5% and immediately amended to put half of that 5% in the county official's retirement. Again, in 2006, a bill was passed to take this 2.5% from the county official's retirement, place it in the Tennessee General Fund, and actually increase that amount withheld from 2.5% to 2.6%. So in summing it up, as other county officials receive this commission for collecting funds for the state, this would put the registers back on equal footing with other constitutional officers. And with that explanation, I stand for questions and ask for your kind consideration.
All right, members. Thank you very much, Representative Wright, for that description. Members, in discussion on House Bill 1647. Representative Lane.
I wasn't familiar with it being called a commission. What happens to the remainder of the commission that they keep?
They use that.
You're recognized, sir.
They use that amount to cover the operation of the Register of Deeds office.
Representative Lynn. Good. Further discussion? Seeing none, there is a cost associated with House Bill 1647. So without objection, House Bill 1647 will go behind the budget. That brings us to item number 19. Item number 19 on our calendar is going to be House Bill 192, and that again is by Representative Wright. You have a motion and a second, and it looks like you have an amendment that makes the bill drafting code 013526. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. That makes the bill.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. You have a motion and you have a second. You're recognized. Well, let's go ahead and get that amendment on. All those in favors of, let's see, Amendment 013526 going on to House Bill 192, say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended, and you're recognized for a description on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me again read in part from the amendment. The department, and that means the Department of Revenue, shall submit a report to the Finance, Ways and Means Committee of the Senate and the House of Representatives outlining the actual cost incurred by the department for the administration and collection of the local option sales tax. If I could have just a moment to speak, this is something I've been here with before. There's quite a bit of money generated by the 1.125% fee retained by the Department of Revenue for the collection of the local sales tax option. And I think I probably have an amount here listed for everyone ranging from $5 million down to $150,000 for individual cities or counties based on this fee. But because of that cost, it would take money away from the state revenue. The amendment only asks for a report of what is the cost of collecting the fee. And with that, again, I would stand for your questions and ask for your kind consideration.
All right, thank you very much for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 192? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 192, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 192 moves to full finance. That brings us to item number 20 on our calendar, House Bill 1959 by Representative Wright. You have a motion to second. You're recognized for a brief description on House Bill 1959.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has already been amended. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It is. Yep, it is traveling.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For a brief description, over the past 3 years, a study by the Education, Recovery, and Innovation Commission, briefly or by acronym referred to as ERIC, has produced the following findings, which give priority by the Education Committee, and supported by Governor Lee, that each state college of applied technology will make available the opportunity to complete at least one program from the TCAT by the students before the student graduates from high school in a county where TCAT's located. And with that brief description, I stand for your questions or your kind consideration.
All right, thank you, Representative Wright. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 1959. Any discussion? Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Wright, it's a great idea. Does that include satellites of these TCATs? And I'm just thinking ahead, we've got a substantial capital improvement budget that's going to put some satellite campuses in other counties as well. So,
You recognize, sir.
Where TCAT exists, the county in which they exist, they are to partnership with the local high school or local high schools in that county to provide training.
thank you, Chairman.
Representative Hall. Good. Members, further discussion on House Bill 1959. Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 1959, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1959 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
All right, that brings us to item number 21 on our calendar. Item number 21 is going to be House Bill 2180 by Chairman Baum. Sir, you are recognized on House Bill 2180, and it looks like there is an amendment, drafting code 014170, that makes the bill. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right, let's go ahead and get into proper motion. You've got proper posture. You've got a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and get this put on. All those in favor of House Bill, or all those in favor of Amendment 014170 going on to House Bill 2180, please say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended, and you are recognized on House Bill 2180.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. In 2012, Tennessee created the Retail Accountability Program that requires wholesalers of alcoholic beverages to report to the Department of Revenue their sales to retailers. The state uses this report to help identify sales for sales tax dollars. And then in 2016, this program was expanded to require wholesalers of food and candy and non-alcoholic beverages like soft drinks to submit a similar report, again, to be used by the state to help track the sale of goods so that they could identify goods on which sales tax is owed. This program in code is set to expire on July the 1st of 2022. This bill would expand that to July the 1st of 2025. And it's used to help identify revenue owed to the state.
All right, thank you very much for this description on House Bill 2180. Any discussion on House Bill 2180? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2180, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2180 moves to full finance.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 22. Item number 22 on our calendar is House Bill 2846. We do have a request to roll House Bill 2846 1 week, so without objection, so moved. That brings us to item number 23 on our calendar. Item number 23 is going to be House Bill 2194 by Leader Gant. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized for a brief description.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. And what this, let me just verify, make sure I'm on the right bill, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2194, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
What this bill does is it simply gives TDOT more tools to enhance the TDOT Litter Grant Program, which will allow for special litter grants for nonprofits, law enforcement, and cities. This bill also includes waterways to the program, which recognizes that litter pickup is important to Tennessee waterways as well. This bill keeps the current beer and soda tax the same. The taxes were just renewed last year. The language doesn't change the current funding going to the county governments as well, and it will become effective July 1st. Now, one thing I want to point out on this legislation that's different and is bringing as a benefit is that in all of our counties, you know, we have this nonprofit base that has a base of volunteers that work for those nonprofits. This gives those nonprofits a tool to select a highway in their community that they can work with TDOT on that brings money back into the general fund of that nonprofit. But the key is tapping into that volunteer base that is sorely lacking in a lot of our communities now. So this just gives an incentive for those nonprofits to help clean up some of our roadways. So with that, Mr. Chairman and committee, I'll be glad to take any questions, but otherwise I propose we move this out.
All right, thank you very much, Leader Gant. Members, any discussion on House Bill 2194? Representative Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. Leader Gant, thank you. Very good idea as well. We just had a Keep Tennessee Beautiful convention, for lack of better words, in Greenville, and we talked about the Adopt a Highway program that had started several decades ago, but is quieted down and not quite as much activity. I think if we could partner the nonprofits with this Keep Tennessee Beautiful program and the Adopt a Highway, I think that might be a marriage that might keep our highways beautiful. I would encourage you to look at that as this bill moves forward as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
All right, thank you very much. Members, further discussion? Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do, as the others have said, I support this bill. I think the litter issue we have in our state has a lot of options for solutions. And I don't think adding taxes or deposits or fees on future products does that, but I think maximizing what we can do with what we currently have is one of the right things to do. I think a promotion campaign also should be considered. I remember growing up seeing the ads about not trashing Tennessee, and they really stuck with me, and that's the way I was raised. But I think we have a lot of folks that aren't privy to that. And I also want to point out, and I did some traveling last fall for some conferences in one of the most taxed and deposited states in the country, and saw at least as much trash there as we have here. And that's not the solution, but I think giving more opportunities for people to get out there and volunteer and pick up, and then some kind of a campaign that would, again, bring back the shame and letting trash blow out of your truck or throwing it out of the window, I think is going to be critical to solving this problem. And very small percentage of the trash on our roadways or in our channels is bottles. It belongs to bottles or cans. So just wanted to point that out, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to state that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Todd. Further discussion on House Bill 2194. Leader Gant, we do have, there is a other fiscal impact here because of the potential effect on local government. So we will have to place this, but I think you can see you've got plenty of support on this, and so I suspect to see this again. Yes, sir, you're recognized.
It's my impression it does not affect the local government. It's keeping the funding inside the current TDOT as we see it.
Okay, thank you. I'll tell you what we're going to do right now, just to get clarification. We're going to go to Ms. Karsner if we can. So without objection, we're going to go out of session. Ms. Karsner.
Kristen Lee Karsner, Fiscal Review Committee. Members of the committee, the issue to the locals would become there's a pot of money right now, and it's not changing that pot of money, but it is changing that part of that money could go to nonprofit organizations instead of where it could go to local government. So there's not a dollar amount that would need to be but there could be that shift.
Leader Gamp.
It's my understanding it does not change that local money that they already get for the litter program. This is outside of that. So I think there's a misunderstanding on how this affects the local money. It does not specifically affect that local money that the counties and cities already get.
Ms. Karsner, do you have a response to that? I don't want to get into a running debate. I just want to get the questions answered.
We can look at it further. That was not how we interpreted the legislation.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions for Ms. Karsner? We're going to go back into session. If not, without objection, we're back in session. So that's the posture. Here's what we currently look at. The fiscal note that we have says what it says. So what I would suggest, Leader Gant, would you like to maybe roll this a week to get this into proper posture?
Absolutely.
All right, so without objection, House Bill 2194, without objection, rolled 1 week. That brings us to item number 24. Item number 24 on our calendar is House Bill 2338. We have a request to roll this for 2 weeks. So without objection, House Bill 2338 will be rolled 2 weeks. That brings us to item number 25 on our calendar, House Bill 2761, again by Leader Gamp. Sir, you're recognized for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief on this one. All this bill is doing is it's directing TASER to conduct a study regarding the implications of utility solar energy development here in Tennessee.
All right, and this is requesting a TASER study, so we will, without objection, we're going to place House Bill 2761 on our TASER calendar. So without objection, so moved. And that brings us to item number 26 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 2167 by Chairman Todd. You have a motion and a second on House Bill 2167 for a brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Get my notes in front of me here.
I'm sorry.
This bill expands projects eligible for the ARP funds that TDEC is authorized to grant. It expands it to include stormwater projects, and also allows some restructuring and refinancing in those same grant structures. Removes the state cap on loan subsidies, and it also authorizes the department to establish a grant program to administer the grants authorized under those acts by the federal government. And it allows the department to promulgate emergency rules in order to efficiently keep pace with the rapidly changing federal law and the law definitions. With that, I'll take questions.
All right, thank you very much. Members, you've heard the description on House Bill 2167. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2167, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2167 moves to full finance. That brings us to item number 27. We have a request to take... Chairman Todd, let's clear this up. What would you like to do with House Bill 2167? We're on that, members, again, that's going to be item number 27, House Bill 2776.
I'll roll this 1 week if you could, please.
All right, so you've heard the request, so without objection, House Bill 2776 will be rolled 1 week. All right. Now, Chairman, I'm sorry, I didn't see you standing over there in the corner a few minutes ago. We're going to go to item number 35. Item number 35 is going to be, I'll let everyone get there, including myself. All right, Representative Garrett, sorry about that. You have a motion to second on House Bill 2353. You're recognized for a brief description, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I was hiding from you. That certainly wasn't my intent, but Representative Freeman spotted me and brought me to your attention, so I appreciate that. This legislation is, well, my annual trust legislation brought to me by the Tennessee Bankers Association. It actually traveled all the way to calendar and rules, and there was a fiscal note put on it because there's a fee that's being eliminated of $1,000. There has been a corrected fiscal note since then, and now that fiscal note says it's absolutely no impact to the budget because the elimination of the fee also eliminates the labor for the fee. So it's a net-net. So there's no fiscal impact at this point, but since we were referred here, we've got to begin here and start out and go forward. So that's, with that explanation, I'll be happy to take any
All right,
any
thank you
questions.
for this description, and we're glad to have you here. So, members, any discussion on House Bill 2353? Question's been called. Any objection to calling the question? Seeing none, hearing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2353, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2353 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Thank you. And I know Chairman Whitson is ready to chomp at the bit, but we're going to jump up to item number 34. I saw, where did Chairman Powers go? There he goes. House Bill 2472 by Chairman Powers. Do you have a motion second? We have a motion second. You're recognized on House Bill 2472 for a brief description. Again, this is item number 34.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2472 will aid many organizations throughout our state that like to raise money to support local charities. They're currently prevented from raising funds until after 5 years after getting their 501c3 or 501c19. House Bill 2472 simply lowers that blackout period from 5 years to 3 years. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
All right, thank you very much for this description. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2472. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2472, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2472 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, members, now let's get back over to, I think it is item number 28. Item number 28, waiting patiently over there is Chairman Whitson. Let me get to my spot here. Item number 28 on our calendar is House Bill 1918 by Chairman Whitson. You have a motion to second. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1918, currently only circuit court judges in Davidson County are authorized to appoint a full-time master to serve as a judicial officer in the absence of the circuit court judge. This legislation will allow any county in our state, not just Davidson County, to authorize the judges of the circuit and chancery courts to appoint masters to probate those matters that the appropriate judge may direct the master here. And with that, sir, I renew my motion.
All right, thank you very much. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 1918. Any discussion? Seeing none, we are now voting on House Bill 1918, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1918 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. That brings us to item number 29. That's Chairman Williams. All right, let's roll item number 29. We're going to roll House Bill 2542 without objection. We're going to roll it to the hill of the calendar. Without objection, so moved. That brings us to item number 30. Item number 30 on our calendar is House Bill 2674, also by Chairman Williams. Without objection, we're going to roll this to the hill of the calendar. So moved. Okay. All righty.
That brings us to item number 31 on our calendar, House Bill 1695 by our own Chairman Hicks. Motion. We have a motion. We have a second. Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, committee. So House Bill 1695, a little bit of context. Last year, this General Assembly passed Public Chapter 518, which allowed health benefits for the Tennessee Highway Patrol at 25 years of retirement under the Legacy Plan. And this bill goes hand in hand in that legislation that it allows those troopers hired after 2015, which are on the hybrid plan, to receive the same health benefits that I just mentioned. So with that said, I'll stand to answer any questions.
Any questions for the sponsor? Mr. Sponsor, this is a wonderful idea. We all support our state troopers, and we recognize it really is an issue in terms of recruitment and retention for new state troopers. But sadly, it does have a cost. Therefore, we have to place it behind the budget. So House Bill 1695 is behind the budget, but we will consider it at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lady.
We are on the second bill on the Chairman Hicks calendar. That's item number 32, House Bill 2264. Chairman Hicks, you're recognized. You do have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Chair Lady and Committee. House Bill 2264 permits development districts to obtain an insurance policy in lieu of a surety bond, and I will answer any questions that you'd like to know. Most of these already have an insurance policy that covers and does the same thing as a surety bond, and this just allows them to have the option of whichever one they want to cover.
Questions for the sponsor? Our development districts do great work all across the state, and if this helps them to work better, then I'm sure that we're all supportive, and there are no budget limitations. Therefore, we can vote on this bill. We are voting on House Bill 2264, moving on to full finance. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 2264 will be considered next in full finance. Item number 33 on our calendar is House Bill 2265, also by Chairman Hicks.
Thank
We
you.
have a motion and a second. Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Lady and members. House Bill 2265 comes to us because of a policy change that was made by our friends at the Tennessee Valley Authority with their Green Power Providers program. That program worked hand in glove with the Tennessee sales tax law from 2010 through 2019 to provide a sales tax credit for solar power equipment purchased by a homeowner or a small business and the placement of that power generated on the TVA grid. House Bill 2265 restores each homeowner and small business to the same eligibility for the solar power equipment tax credit and recognizes the new requirement of energy storage because of no access to the TVA grid.
Are there questions of the sponsor? Again, a wonderful idea, but does come with a cost. And with great regret, we place that without objection, House Bill 2265, behind the budget.
All right.
We just did.
All right, members, we are pretty much out of time for today, so all those bills that were not taken up on today's calendar, we're going to roll those 1 week without objection, so moved. And that brings us to the end of our calendar. Any further business coming before the body? Seeing none without objection, we stand adjourned.